Okay, it's time for the second part of the Another Jesus portion of the Dismantling the Watchtower series. Now we're going to look at the negative evidences that the apostles did preach that Jesus was ingenerate deity. Can anyone name me anyone who, from the death of John until the advent of Arius, believed that Jesus was a created God? I don't know. I really don't know of anyone. And mind you, this has to be someone who's orthodox, not some, Gnostic screwball or whatever who would believe things that we both find repugnant as Christians and Jehovah's Witnesses. I took a good look through some of the early Christological heresies. You had the Ebionites around the end of the first century, I think. They believed Jesus was nothing more than an exalted man. They denied that he was born of a virgin. You had the Sabellians, who were kind of like today's modalists, who believed that Jesus was the same person as the Father. You had the Docetists, who they were towards the end of the first century. They denied that Jesus came in the flesh at all. You just don't see people who went around teaching that Jesus was a mighty God who was created by Jehovah. You just don't. You don't see the early church fathers writing against such people. You had Ignatius writing against the Docetists. You had Irenaeus writing 5 books against all the heretics in his day. But Tertullian's writing against Tertullian and Hippolytus. They're writing against the Sabellians. You're just not going to see people saying, "Whoa, stay away from these people who believe that Jesus is a created mighty God," which is a pretty strong indication that those people did not exist until the time of Arius. So really, guys, I just think about this. You're living in a world where the right belief about Jesus Christ went completely dormant right after the apostles died and didn't resurface until almost 200 years later. And meanwhile, everybody else had just completely gotten Jesus Christ wrong, including the people that the apostles even taught. Now, I hear Acts 20:29 being quoted right now. Here it is. I know, Paul warned about such people, Mike. I know that after I leave, savage wolves will come in among you and will not spare the flock. Now, I want you to ask yourselves, really, do you really believe people like Ignatius and Polycarp were those savage wolves? I mean, these were men who went to their deaths as Christian martyrs, who, my goodness, Ignatius, as he was being transported to Rome to die, and I don't know about you all, but if I was about to be eaten by savage beasts in the Roman arena, I don't know, I'd be peeing my pants. I'd be praying to God for the strength to be, to be strong in the face of martyrdom. Ignatius cared enough about his brother churches that he sent them, 6 of them, and his friend Polycarp, he sent letters to them, telling them to stay away from heresy, to root out the Docetists. Polycarp, was not exactly one to sit down and have a cup of tea with heretics. His student Irenaeus gives an account. He said, Polycarp himself replied to Marcion, Marcion was a Gnostic heretic when he ran into him in Rome, whom he met on one occasion. And he said, when Marcion said, "Do you know me?" he replied, "I do know thee, the firstborn of Satan." And Irenaeus added, "Such was the horror which the apostles and their disciples had against holding even the verbal communication with any corrupters of the truth." So, people like Polycarp and Ignatius, they were not ones to sit down and with a heretic and have a cup of tea and chew over what they had to say. No. They knew God's truth. They heard it communicated from their masters. And, if you have a steak dinner on the table, you don't say, should I go out for Taco Bell? No offense to Taco Bell. It's good chow at times. But, there was no reason for them to supplant the truth, the truth that they heard with the lies and speculations of others. These guys believed that Jesus was ingenerate deity, and it was learned from the apostles. It just was. You basically have, if you want to believe that Jesus is a created God, you can't read the Bible as the record of of what the apostles taught. You basically have to treat it like it's a doctrinal ingredient book. You basically have to take 2 cups of the Shema, Deuteronomy 6:4, cup of Colossians 1:15, half cup of Revelation 3:14, half cup of Proverbs 8:22, sprinkle John 14:28, a dash of 1 Corinthians 15:28, and a smidgen of 1 Corinthians 11:3. Set it down, stir it up, put it in the oven, let it cook at 450 for an hour. That's the one, the spicy had to see. That's the way you got to approach it. If you look at these texts in the light of what the post-apostolic church believed, you're just not going to conclude that Jesus was a created God. And can you really live in a world? You basically have 2 choices of realities to live in. You can live in a reality where people like Ignatius and Polycarp and Justin Martyr and Irenaeus were wicked apostates, or at least their minds were badly clouded by apostasy and they just didn't know the truth. And yet they died martyrs' deaths, and these were the wicked wolves that Paul spoke about in Acts 20:29. Or you can live in a much more sane reality. You can live in a reality where these guys were believing upon and continuing the preaching of apostolic truth. I know one of these realities will really get you thinking about whether or not the Watchtower is, God's organization. But that's not such a bad thing. Or you can live in this other very strange reality and experience all kinds of cognitive dissonance where champions of orthodoxy and martyrs are also wicked apostates. I guess the choice is yours. Think about it.